On April 18th, 2008, shortly after the cherry blossom season had ended in Tokyo, a woman seemingly vanished without a trace from her apartment in Koto Ward. She was seen going in, but there was no sign that she ever left. She was just gone. The case came to be known as the Koto Mansion Spiriting Away case, and when the truth was finally unraveled, the reality of the situation proved to be even stranger and far more horrifying. What really happened that day? And perhaps more importantly, why? Let's take a look. On March 1st of that year, only 6 weeks before she would go missing, Tojo Rurika, then 23, moved into an apartment on the 9th floor of the Square Shiomi building in Koto Ward, Tokyo, right next to Tokyo Bay, with her older sister. The building was rather secure, with auto locks and security cameras everywhere, and they were the only residents on the 9th and top floor, other than a 33-year-old man who lived a few doors down. Rurika worked at an advertising agency, and on the night of April 18th, she was captured by the building's security cameras coming home shortly after 7:30 p.m. She also sent her sister a text message informing her that she had just gotten home around the same time. But that was the last anyone saw or heard of her. When her sister got home around 8:45 p.m, she discovered their apartment was empty. While searching for her sister, she discovered some blood near the door, and fearing the worst, she called the police. They were also unable to find her anywhere, and after checking the security camera footage, they were able to find her entering the building, but not leaving. It was as if she had simply vanished into thin air. Other than the ominous blood stain, that is. Police started questioning residents in the building, hoping that someone had seen something the security cameras hadn't. Around 10:40 p.m, they spoke to the man who lived a few doors down, asking if he perhaps had seen Rurika that night or heard anything suspicious. The man, 33-year-old software engineer Hoshijima Takanori, reportedly told them he didn't know anything, and that was that. It appeared a woman in the heart of one of the biggest cities in the world had simply vanished without a trace. But people don't just vanish. She had to be somewhere, and the answer was perhaps not surprising, although what happened next most certainly was. The next day, police began searching the apartments in the Square Shiomi building. If the security cameras didn't capture her leaving, then the most logical answer was that she was still somewhere inside. They also found fingerprints inside the apartment that didn't belong to Rurika or her sister, and so, combined with the blood, it seemed almost certain that foul play was at work. Naturally, they asked her almost neighbor Hoshijima if they could search his apartment, and he happily let them in. By this point, the police suspected that Rurika had been kidnapped and was being held hostage in another apartment. Yet they found nothing in Hoshijima's apartment, and he was happy to oblige them, asking them if they wanted to check here and there. Ultimately, they found nothing in any of the apartments. It appeared she had well and truly disappeared, and so the media began to dub the case as the Koto Mansion Spiriting Away case. But something about Hoshijima made the police suspicious, namely his fingerprints, or rather, lack of. When they visited to check his apartment, they were unable to get a proper fingerprint check from him because they had been mostly destroyed by chemicals. How curious. And so, police waited a month and then took his fingerprints again. This time, they got a match. They were the same fingerprints found in Rurika's apartment the day she went missing. It seemed the culprit had finally been found, and he was, of course, right next door. But the story was about to get even stranger, as police were finally able to uncover the terrible tragedy that happened that night. But first, a little background. Hoshijima was born on January 5th, 1975 in Okayama City. When he was just shy of his second birthday, He suffered bad burns to his legs after chasing the family cat into the bathroom. He climbed onto the lid of the bath and it broke, plunging him into the boiling water below. These burns were so bad that Hoshijima, who had just started walking, was forced to crawl again, and it wasn't until over half a year later that he was finally able to walk under his own strength again. These burns left terrible scars, however, and it was something that Hoshijima would form a terrible complex over whilst growing up. To make matters worse, he got bullied at school over the scars, and he was never able to get a girlfriend either. Hoshijima also held great resentment towards his parents, as they didn't seem terribly concerned about the bullying he faced, and he felt they didn't do enough to protect him as a child, to stop him from getting burnt in the first place. He rarely let this resentment show, however, and by all accounts, he had a normal relationship with his parents, at least to the outside eye. But he also gave up on the idea of ever having a girlfriend, and after he graduated from high school, he started working at Sega in Tokyo, where he stayed for the next 4 years. After that, he started working for a software development company, and before long was making around 500,000 yen a month as a contract worker. He was recognized for his skills, said to be swift and accurate with his work, and he even mentored junior members within the company. He was doing so well that he would reportedly take a taxi home from the station each night, handing the driver 3,000 yen for a 2,500 yen ride, and not bothering to take any change. But Hoshijima still harbored great hatred towards his parents. During all of his time in Tokyo, he reportedly only saw them twice, and he told them over the phone that he never wanted to see them again. He wanted nothing more than to see them dead. Despite having great success in his career, he was unable to move past the many issues he had with the burns on his legs. Having given up on any ideas of meeting and marrying a nice girl, his desires then started to twist. If he was unable to meet a woman who would like him for who he was, then he would just have to find a slave who couldn't say no to him. Hoshijima shared his twisted desires on the social media platform Mixi, where he had a profile titled Daruma, Daruma, Daruma Amputation. You may remember the Japanese urban legend that sees women abducted, usually while on trips abroad, and their limbs are cut off and they're paraded around in weird exhibits labeled as a human Daruma. That, it would seem, was exactly what Hoshijima was into. According to Hoshijima himself, he never dated any women throughout his life. He didn't even have any female friends, but all he wanted was someone he could go on dates with and then spend the night with. And despite knowing it was unrealistic, and such a woman only existed in fiction, he wanted this woman to focus on and think about nothing but him. No other woman would be acceptable. She had to be someone whose only focus and purpose in life was him. He admitted to being jealous of his colleagues who had families or partners, while also admitting that he himself couldn't handle rejection, nor could he put in the effort himself to find a girlfriend. He wanted, in essence, someone to drop out of the sky and confess her feelings to him, and do whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted. Needless to say, he didn't have the healthiest view of relationships. And so, fully realizing that this would never happen, he decided that he would have to abduct someone and basically brainwash her into doing his bidding. But she would have to be exactly what he wanted, with no trace of her original personality left. And so, it didn't matter who it was. He came up with the idea to abduct someone, anyone, and turn her into his slave, overwriting her personality with one of his own liking. On April 18th, 2008, Hoshijima decided it was time to make his move after watching his neighbor for the previous week. When Tojo Rurika entered her apartment and turned to lock the door behind her, he pushed his way in and struck her on the head. Threatening her with a knife, he forced her into his own apartment, where he then restrained her. But he clearly didn't think his plan through very well, as striking Rurika caused her to bleed on the floor, which her sister found when she came home and found their apartment empty. When the police first visited his apartment to ask if he knew anything, Rurika was tied up inside, and Hoshijima panicked. What happened next was horrifying, and I won't go into the details. But fearing the police would return to search his apartment and find Rurika, he decided he had to get rid of her. But how can you get rid of someone when police have eyes everywhere and are looking for her? You need to do so in a way they cannot see. If you remember his Daruma fetish, it didn't take long for him to figure out a way. Hoshijima reportedly spent the next 2 weeks carrying out his evil plan. You may remember that police actually searched his apartment and found nothing. That was because they were looking for, well, a person. By that point, Hoshijima had already started to carry out his plan. If police had looked a little closer, searched a little more thoroughly, then they may have made a horrific, grisly discovery. But they didn't. At any rate, once police were finally able to match his fingerprints, they arrested him, and DNA analysis from bloodstains in his apartment were also confirmed to be Rurika's blood. They also discovered her wallet and license in his apartment as well. On June 25th, he was finally arrested for Rurika's murder. What made all of this even more horrifying, however, was that once Hoshijima's arrest became public knowledge, some people realized they had seen him before. News footage that aired the day after Rurika disappeared showed Hoshijima himself, talking to journalists outside the apartment building. At one point, he even laughed and said that the police probably suspected him. Hoshijima's trial began on January 13th, 2009 in Tokyo. He admitted to all charges, and although the defense sought the death penalty, he was eventually sentenced to life in prison. At present, he is still serving his sentence in Chiba prison. But what did you guys think of this one? Let me know in the comments below, and if you'd like to help support this channel so you can see more content like this, please consider hitting that join button down below as well. Every bit of support really helps. Thanks guys, and I'll see you again next time.